Dr. DeMartini, good morning. Let's get you to unmute there.
Hi, Mike.
Hey,
I'm
how are you?
doing great.
Well, thank you for coming on. Everybody's really excited. But I would love for you, if you could first tell everybody who you are, give a little bit of your background, because a lot of people don't know you here.
Okay, I'm Dr. John DeMartini. I am presently in a little place called Cagliari, Italy, in my ship, and I basically have dedicated the last 52 years of my life to teaching, researching, and writing in the field of human behavior and helping people master their lives and live a self-actualized life and empower each of the primary areas of life so they can do something extraordinary and amazing with their life. And I can't think of anything else I'd rather do. That's what I love doing. And been doing that since I was 18. I'm going on 71, so I'm still doing it.
Yeah. And you tell everybody where you live a majority of your time, because I always love this ship that you live on.
I live on a ship called the World that circumnavigates the world. I've been living here for nearly 24 years, and we go island to island and place to place all around the world, from the Antarctic to the Arctic to you name it. Wherever we decide to go, we vote and decide where we do it. It's a group of us that live here. And it's a pretty good sized ship. It's around 700 feet long and about 120 foot wide and about 12 stories high, I think. So
Wow.
it's a great
Yeah.
space to move around on. Saves me from having to do some flying, although I do a lot of flying too.
And what time is it in the time zone you're in now?
It's 5:03 here
In the
in Italy.
morning?
And no, PM.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, I'm glad you're here. I got some questions. We'll tackle as many as you can. And this group is feel free to be 100% yourself. One thing I love about Dr. DeMartini is his personality and how he delivers information. But let's dig in. So, tell us about what every human needs should understand about the power of values, which has been a big thing that you woke up inside of me and Jen and my family for since probably 5 years ago in your world.
When I was 23 years old, I asked myself the question, why do some people walk their talk and some people limp their life? Why do some people do what they say and others don't? Why do some self-actualize and one um, become victims of history instead of masters of destiny?
Mm.
And I realized that that was determined by the inner drive that they have. And that led me to the study of axiology, which is a study of human value and worth. And I realized that each individual has a set of priorities, a set of values, things that are most to least important in their life that are fingerprint specific to them. And that these set of values through the glial system in the brain determine what you perceive, what you decide, and what you act and how you act. So
Mm.
this was the foundation of human behavior and the character that we develop. And so I, at the time, read every book that was available on the topic and looked at all the value determination process to determine what values people actually live by, because the hierarchy of your values is dictating how you prioritize your perception, decisions, and actions.
Mm.
I was not satisfied with the value determination process that I perceived. There was a philosopher named David Hume, who was a Scottish philosopher who broke down values into is versus ought. What are the actual values you live versus what they ought to be according to society?
Mm.
And the is versus ought paradox, I was noticing that almost every one of the texts that I read on axiology was about how we ought to be fitting into society, not about how we actually live and how we respond to our stimuli. And I then developed a methodology to discern what they actually are to the best of my ability instead of what they should be. Because, most of us, um, probably in this group, you'll be more exceptional, but most people subordinate themselves to their outer influence, mothers, fathers, preachers, teachers, conventions, traditions, and mores, put people on pedestals and authorities, inject the values of outer authorities into their life, attempt to be somebody they're not, be second at being somebody else, live in the shadows of others instead of stand on the shoulders of giants, and live in the imposter syndrome instead of actually living congruently and aligned with who they really are. And because you have a hierarchy of values, whatever is highest on the list of values, your ontological identity revolves around, and your teleological purpose revolves around, and your epistemological area of expertise revolves around it. So identifying what is highest on a person's value, an individual's values, is, in my opinion, a very wise thing to start with, because you're disciplined, reliable, and focused in your highest values, and you'll procrastinate, hesitate, and frustrate in lower values. So if you don't know where you're going to excel and you're not setting goals that are aligned and congruent with that, you'll probably be living by the injected values of outer authorities and living by oughts, deontologically by duty, instead of living by design in an inspired fashion according to what you really are inspired to do. So I studied values and became kind of a guy that wrote books on that area and infiltrated that area pretty well. And I make sure I start in that arena with people. Whenever I'm consulting, when I'm trying to help people, I don't want to waste my time on anything other than what they're going to be committed to. And they're only going to be committed and disciplined and reliable and focused and capable and excel in their highest values. And when you
Yeah.
meet people that do exceptionally well, there's a high degree of congruency. When they're not doing so well, they're incongruent and they're subordinating to outer influence. And they're, instead of being unborrowed visionaries, they're borrowed visionaries. And they're trying to accomplish something that's not true for them. And they're wondering why they keep having internal conflicts. And the thing that people call limiting beliefs are nothing more than the comparison of what they actually want to do versus what they think they should be doing and ought to be doing, and the conflicts of those injected values. Those are what limit people. So values are pretty crucial to mastery, knowing what the
Yeah.
highest value is. And anytime you're doing what's highest on your value, you excel. And anytime you try to do whatever's low on your value, you don't. If you don't fill your day with highest priority actions that inspire you, your day fills up entropically with values that don't. And so prioritizing your life on a daily basis and delegating lower priority things and dedicating to what's highest in priority is one of the keys of self-actualization. So anyway, I could go off for hours on that, on the values, but I guess that's a start.
Oh, I know. We've spent days on this with you. It's changed my life, my wife's life, my son's life. Talk just a second more about like where these shoulds come in. Like, I should do this for my husband. I should do this for my wife. I should go to Christmas dinner. Like, and what is that doing to people today?
Well, that's the only way a man survives, if he does what his wife says she should do. I mean, that's supposed to be a joke. I got terrible jokes, so just bear with my jokes. No, that's how you survive. Just ask your wife what you want she wants you to do, and then do that, and then you know that you'll survive. You'll be alive. I'm joking. Now, anytime you meet somebody in a mall or social function and have a distorted view of them and imagine them to be more intelligent than you, or more savvy in business than you, or more financially viable than you, or more, stable in relationship than you, or more socially connected than you, or more physically fit than you, or more spiritually aware than you. Anytime you exaggerate them, you will, by the law of comparison and contrast, minimize yourself. And the moment you do, because values move from those who have the most power to those that have least power in society, you will automatically inject their values into your life and try to envy them and imitate them. Ralph Waldo Emerson warned against that. Einstein also warned against that. He said, "My contempt for authority is what made me one." He didn't subordinate to that. In fact, he had a guy named Philip Leonard, who was a professor that he challenged, who was a Nobel Prize winner, And he turned out that his challenge was accurate, and the Nobel Prize winner didn't want to be humbled and tried to get him assassinated. But the reality is he didn't subordinate to outer authority. That's what made him the great authority. And so if we meet somebody and we put them on a pedestal and we minimize ourselves and put ourselves in the pit, we're going to inject their values into our life. And the way we know we're doing that is we listen to the imperative language that surfaces in our brain when we do. We hear ourselves saying, I really got to do this. I really have to do this. I really must do this. I really should do this. I really ought to do this. I'm really supposed to do this. I really need to do this. Anytime you're saying got to, have to, must, should, ought to, supposed to, or need to, that's an injected imperative coming from an outer authority you've subordinated to. Freud called this the superego in his time. And the first superego is originating from our mothers, usually, then our fathers, and our preachers, and our teachers, and eventually different leaders and different dynamics and social structure. But as long as we do, we're going to have a break-on and an internal conflict. And many headaches, particularly migraine headaches, are nothing but that. There are conflicts between what your calling and your highest value is and what you think it should be according to some outer authority. And when they're outer authorities, they become the author of your life instead of you. And now you become a borrowed visionary instead of an unborrowed visionary, trying to live in other people's lives and living in their shadows instead of standing on their shoulders. It's wiser to go and find out whatever you perceive them having that you're too humble to admit that you don't think you have, and find out where it is inside you and stand on their shoulders and realize that if you perceive something amazing in them, it's because you have it, but you're too humble to admit it. Once you realize you have it and you stand on their shoulders, you don't subordinate to their value system, and you then give yourself permission to go back to your own, and this is where you excel. Now, you also have another side. You meet people in a mall and you think, what a friggin' idiot. What a failure. What a poor person. What a lousy relationship guy or girl, whatever. What a social ineptness. What physical, how awful they look and how unwise they are spiritually. And you put them down. And now you exaggerate yourself by the law of contrast. Now you project your values onto people and expect them to live in your values. Anytime you expect to live in other people's values or project your values onto others and expect them to live in yours, you have basically a non-sustainable futility. It doesn't work. Anybody been married for a period of time and tried to get them to change and live in your values, you'll find out it's futile and sometimes fatal. Spouse will castrate you and kill you. I'm joking. But the reality is we're not here to try to live in other people's values. We're here to live on our own. But do we have the courage? As Jung said, do we have the courage to be ourselves in a world that wants us to fit into being somebody we're not, to try to be somebody we're not? And this is the courage that great leaders have, the courage to be ridiculed, violently opposed until they become self-evident with an original thought that's unique to their value structure, that they contribute their genius to the world.
Yeah, amazing. Talk about a little bit more on this, especially the traits. I mean, I've done training with you on the traits of the greats, but one of the things that always shocked me, John, was like, oh, they're a liar, but I'm never a liar. Or they're, selfish and I'm never. What is the part where these traits, we carry all of them?
Well, it's nothing new. If you go back to the New Testament, Romans 2:1, there's a quote there basically stating, and I'll paraphrase it, that whatever you see in other people, that you judge in other people, beware, because whatever you judge in others, you do the same thing. And that's more profound than first meets the eye. Now, I first started becoming aware of that in my 20s and late 20s, really grasping that. And so instead of waiting for people to push my buttons, I decided to go to the Oxford English Dictionary, which was the largest dictionary I could find. And I went through page by page, word by word, because I used to love reading dictionaries and growing my vocabulary. I went through word by word, and any word that represented a human behavioral trait, I underlined. Now, I found 4,628 traits in that book. There was a gentleman 35 years earlier named Gordon Allport that found 4,000 in the same book. So he did the same thing for a different purpose. And then out to the side, on the side of the book, the dictionary, I wrote the name of an individual who I perceived was the most extreme exemplifier of that behavior. So if that, let's say it was inconsiderate, and I go, who is the most inconsiderate person I can think of in my mind? Now, these are my projections and they're my delusions, but this is how I projected it. And I wrote their name on it. And then I went and I asked, all right, John, where and when do I display and demonstrate that trait until I own the trait equally, quantitatively and qualitatively to what they did? And to my surprise, I found that I had all 4,628 traits. I was nice and mean and kind and cruel and considerate and inconsiderate and generous and stingy and forthright, withdrawed, and honest and dishonest, and sometimes considerate and inconsiderate, and thoughtful and thoughtless. I mean, I had every one of those traits that I did. Even I realized that I also wanted to, I was so angry sometimes, I wanted to kill people, and I was so pleased somebody, I wanted to save their lives. I had every one of the traits that I found in this dictionary. And when I did that, I noticed that the people around me were less likely to push my buttons because the buttons we have that we get our buttons pushed by are only disowned parts. They're only
Mm,
things we're too proud or too humble to admit what we see in others that we don't see in ourselves. So I figured instead of waiting for people to push my button and then go own the trait, I might as well foresight it instead of hindsight it and dig in
mm,
there and find out where I have that trait in my life. And I can't say that eliminated all my buttons, but it definitely lessened them and it definitely gave me an opportunity to be able to reflect. Pure reflective awareness and the ownership of all traits is called fulfillment. You
mm.
know, any trait, I always say at the level of our most authentic self, which the theologians call the soul, nothing's missing in us. It's pleromic and fulfilled. And that means nothing's missing, that we have no judgment. But at the level of the senses, in the phenomenological world, we judge. And we're too proud or too humble to admit what we see in others inside us. And therefore, we have disowned parts. And as a result of it, we have our judgments and emptiness. Every time we judge, we feel empty. So love allows us to feel fulfilled, but judgment makes us feel empty. And the emptiness comes because we're too proud or too humble to admit what we see in others inside us. And pure reflective awareness and transparency of that liberates that. So when you see people that you really, really look up to and admire that are doing extraordinary things on the planet, you make a list of everything that you admire them for, all the traits, all the actions and inactions that they demonstrate, and then you go dig inside yourself and find out where you have them to the same degree, both the hero and the villain side, the positives and the negatives, the things you liked and disliked. And when you owned
Mm.
them, the second you own it and really own it and level the playing field, you get the same opportunities in your life as they do. Ever since I've been doing that, I did that on celebrities, and I've been blessed to be filmed now in 60 movies because of that. I've had the opportunity to do it on wealthy people, and it allowed me to become, it helped me become financially independent. It allowed me to do it with people that are movers and shakers, and it's allowed me to work and consult with amazing people and meet amazing people on the planet. So we get to play in the playing field that we're able to own all our traits in. So anything we disown that we're too proud or too humble to admit that we see in others and we don't see it in ourselves keeps us playing smaller. So that's why I call it owning the traits of the greats. Anybody that's done extraordinary things, both heroes and villains, you want to be able to do it. Because anybody that goes to the top of the game, let's use a Donald Trump example. You can see that he's a hero to half the world and he's a villain to the other half of the world. If you
Yeah.
can't own your hero and villain, don't expect to play in the same field of possibility that Donald's playing in. You got to be able to own your hero and villain if you want to do that. So I
Mm.
just realized I'm not a nice person. I'm not a mean person. I'm an individual with a set of values. If you support my values, I can be nice as a pussycat. You challenge my values, I can be mean as a tiger. I'm a human being with all capacities. And I got to be able to honor that and use them all, as Nietzsche said and as Machiavelli described in The Prince. If we can open that door and honor all parts of that, we give ourselves permission to play in a bigger playing field.
Yeah. One of the things you clearly taught my wife is every time somebody talks really nice about me, she says she has to balance me out and knock my ass down. And so I have a question for you. Talk about balance of this kind of homeostasis of one thing's happening great, one thing's happening bad, and we kind of judge one and excited about the other.
Well, if you look very carefully, Everybody here has probably had a moment when they really infatuated with somebody and put them on a pedestal. Think about the first date way back in the wind or whatever. Somebody that you really wanted to, they represented something you put on a pedestal. They represented prey. You wanted to consume them and, kiss them and hug them and all kind of stuff. And when you did, you ended up sacrificing things that were normally important with your normal daily life to be with them. Raise your hand if you can know what I'm talking about. The first few weeks, particularly, you started doing weird stuff that you don't normally do with your life, but to fit in with them for fear of loss of them, because you were enamored and infatuated with them. And the moment you do, you'll inject their values, try to live in their values because you've got them above you. You got them more important than you. And in the process of doing that, you sacrifice what's important to you for what's important to them temporarily until you build up enough resentment and say, I want my life back. During that time, when you inject the values like that and try to live in their values, you become juvenilely dependent on them. You fear the loss of them and you act like a little child around them. You disempower yourself to them. They become a mommy figure if it's a girl or a daddy figure. Now, on the other side of the equation, if you really resent somebody and you really look down on them, you can puff yourself up and then project your values onto them. And when they challenge you with the actions that you resent, you become precociously independent. And now you exaggerate yourself and puff yourself up and project onto them and expect them to live in your values, both of which are futile. You can't sustain living in their values, and they can't sustain living in yours. And that's just going to humble you if you get cocky, and it's going to lift you with resentment if you get humbled to try to get you back into the center. And then if you get back in the center and have reflective awareness and realize that what you see in them is you have now a balanced orientation. And this is where you have sustainable fair exchange and equity and equanimity and where you actually have the most power. But as long as you got people on pedestals or pits and they support or challenge you, you stay juvenilely dependent or precociously independent. So what they found in psychology and ecology and biological systems, that maximum growth and development occurs at the border of support and challenge. Maximum development and growth occurs at the border of order and chaos, sometimes called. So that means that whenever there's a supporter, there's a challenger. When there's a challenger, there's a supporter. That's why your family, if you look carefully, there was both peace and war, support and challenge, kind and cruel in the family. Put your hands up if you can see that in your family. You had both sides. That's part of the nature of family dynamics. And society is the same way. And they've even managed it in the Global Peace Index. They've gone around in the world and they've shown that both peace and war and support and challenge and cooperation, competition, and all complementary opposites are balanced. And Heraclitus in 2000, almost 600 years ago, wrote about this in his time. He said there's a unity of opposites. So when we realize that if we're being challenged and criticized, somebody's supporting us, and when somebody's supporting us, somebody's challenging us, and we realize the universe is doing that, just like prey and predator in a food chain, to make sure we grow maximally, then we realize that our addiction and the fantasy from our amygdala that we're going to get pleasure without pain is futile. The Buddha says the desire for that which is unobtainable and the desire to avoid that which is unavoidable is the source of human suffering. So many people get addicted to a one-sided world and they want pleasure and support and praise and kindness, and then they don't grow there. They stay juvenilely dependent on them. You need both. That's why your parents played out opposites. That's why your spouse, if you come home praised at work, she may nail you or he may nail you. If you come home from work and you've been humbled and challenged, then they may support you and build you up. And so the relationship dynamic is going to do whatever it takes to keep you back in equilibrium between support and challenge. Maximum growth development occurs at the border of support and challenge. And by the way, love is the balance of support and challenge. If you look at how your long-term relationship is, they've supported and challenged you. Raise your hand if you can see that in your life. The purpose you love most has been nothing but support and challenge. If you get cocky, they knock you down. If you get humble, they lift you up. And that's just the nature of the beast. So maximum growth occurs at the border of those two. So the moment you see one, if you don't see the other, you'll be fooled by one-sidedness. If you go and look for the other one, you'll find it's always there. There's a beautiful combination of the unity of opposites, always aware. And the individual that sees them simultaneously is stable. The person that sees them sequentially over time, through time, are usually unstable and usually have emotional vicissitudes, and they usually are less empowered. As Warren Buffett says, until you can manage your emotions, don't expect to manage money. And as Robert Greene said, don't expect to be a leader if you can't manage your emotions. When you see one without the other, you have emotions. When you see both of them simultaneously, you feel centered and loved.
Yeah, yeah. John, what causes this whole you hear a lot of people say this monkey mind, their mind doesn't stop, it races during before bed and stuff. What's causing that?
Anytime you are infatuated with somebody, they're going to occupy space and time in your mind, and they're going to create intrusive thoughts. Raise your hand if you've been highly infatuated with somebody and you couldn't get them out of your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, when you try to sleep that night, you'll be fantasizing and probably having wet dreams. I mean, you'll be fantasizing about the person and be thinking about them and fantasizing about the pleasure of the future. But you've also been resentful to somebody, extremely resentful, and couldn't get them out of your mind. And you had intrusive thoughts and you thought about the nightmares of the past. Raise your hand if you've also had that.
Yeah.
Anytime you have an imbalanced valent mind where you're seeing positive without a negative or a negative without a positive, you're conscious of the upsides, unconscious of the downsides, or conscious of the downsides, unconscious of the upsides, you're going to have valency because your amygdala assigns the valency of stimuli, stores it in the hippocampus, which is called the subconscious mind, and basically stores it there and keeps you with intrusive thoughts. Why? Because positive without negative represents prey, and negative without positive represents predator. And when you see prey, you don't want to starve to death. You want to stay awake and go after it and chase it. And when you see predator, you want to be awake to be able to run from it. So you are automatically on alert. That's why you have insomnia at night whenever you have imbalanced ratios of perception and you have valency and highly charged states. Only when you have a balanced mind is the signal to noise ratio clear. And now you don't have the brain noise. You now have a clear mind and you can rest beautifully at night when you sleep. So insomnia is letting you know you have an imbalanced ratio of perceptions in some events that you accumulated through the day.
Yeah. John, I could hear some of the people maybe thinking, yeah, but John, how do you get a balanced mind with when you're dealing with somebody you cared about died, or somebody lied to you, or somebody didn't honor their agreement of what they said they would do? How do they find that in some of those tough things?
Well, a tough thing only means you're choosing to see the downside without the up or the upside without the downside.
Yeah.
If you take the time and reflect and go look at where you've done the same thing, like it says in New Testament, Romans, and go and ask, okay, where have I done the same behavior? I've been doing that for about 41 years clinically with people, and I've yet to find anybody who had a judgment that they couldn't find in themselves. And when they balance it out quantitatively and qualitatively, they don't have the judgment. And then if they go and find out whatever they think is terrible, what's the benefit to it? Because it's never what happens to you that matters. What matters is how you perceive it. As John Milton said, you can make a heaven out of a hell or a hell out of a heaven. It's thinking makes it so. You decide to make something a heaven or hell. You decide to see the positives or negatives in things. It's interesting. I use the analogy in the breakthrough experience. If I was to take your hand and put it on a table, I'm going to use Jeff because you look like you're a pretty strong guy. Is that right, Jeff? You're pretty like you work out or whatever.
He is.
You look like it. You kind of look like you know what you're doing when it comes to bodybuilding or something. But anyway, let's say I put your hand on a table and I took a sledgehammer and I just slammed the hell out of it and flattened your thumb. You'd probably be thinking, well, that you asshole, that's mean, that's cruel. Why'd you do that? You'd punch me. But if I told you that there's $1 billion in US dollars on a pallet waiting for you, you get the home of your dream completely paid for, including the taxes and all costs for the rest of your life. You get the woman of your dreams, and it could be your wife. If it's not, then whoever that is. And you get a car of your dreams. And all that, if I get to slam your thumb, you get $1 billion plus the house, plus everything if I get to slam your thumb. And in 10 days, your thumb will be perfectly normal. It'll be back to normal in 10 days. It'll be swollen for about 10 days and be back to normal in 10 days. Would you let me slam your thumb? I bet you would.
Pete.
Raise your hand if you just put your hand on the table then. The women would do it.
It got double hand. Everybody's starting to smash their thumb already.
Hell yeah. So now is the slamming of the thumb good or evil? It depends on what the associations you make with it and the expectations that come with it.
Hmm.
How many understand that?
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good.
It,
John,
it's based on the expectation. So if you have anytime you have an expectation that's unmet, you have sorrow. Anytime you have something that's exceeded your expectation, you have joy. And those ratios of perception are controllable. I can take anything that's ever happened to you, I guarantee you. I don't care how harsh it is, and I could ask you a series of questions and make you conscious of what you've been unconscious of and find the blessings and benefits of it. I've done it many, many times, thousands of times, and actually have you grateful. And the thing you thought was traumatic isn't even traumatic, it becomes ecstatic. Traumatic and ecstatic are labels we give to things that we have imbalanced ratios of perception on that we're choosing not to get past our label.
mm,
Can I share a story, Mike? A cool
yeah,
story.
absolutely.
This may have some relevance. So I got called by a gentleman who was driving down a highway in Africa, and two cars came up on the side of him. A car slowed down in front of him, and a car came up behind him and trapped him on the freeway. Four cars. All of a sudden, one of the cars, people came out with machine guns, pointed at him, banged out his window, opened up his car, pulled him out, put a thing over his head, and stuck him in a trunk, and drove off, left his car on the highway. He was now in the back of a trunk. He was told that they're ransoming millions of dollars from him, and they're going to kill his family if he doesn't pay within a prompt time. And they had proof that he had their family. So they were under ransom. And this was a large sum of money. He owned a very large chain of stores in that country and was very wealthy. And this had happened 3 years earlier. And it took him 2.5 weeks to raise the money because, many times you have businesses, but you don't have liquid capital. And they wanted liquid capital. So he raised the money, paid the ransom, got released. His family got released. And he went back home. And for 3 years, quote, therapy, post-traumatic stress disorder, and affected by it. So now he contacts me. Somebody told him to contact John. So he calls me on a Zoom, actually. And I asked him a simple question. Go to the moment when you felt most tragic. You thought you were being traumatized. So when I got put in the back trunk, the fumes were there. It was pitch dark. I needed to pee. I was constrained. I could barely move. I was having difficulty breathing. I was concerned that they were going to kill my wife and kids, that if I gave them the money, it would be futile. They'd kill me anyway. This kind of stuff was going through his head. I explained to him that it's impossible for the mind to have a torture without an ecstasy. The excitatory and inhibitory aspects of the brain have to be balanced, and so the brain sets up homeostatic mechanisms and dissociates from traumatic experience and creates ecstatic experiences to counterbalance it in order to maintain homeostasis in the brain. So I made him go into it, and at the exact moment when he was feeling constrained, I had him find out where he was being freed. And he imagined himself in a field, running through a field free. And he had birds and butterflies around him. When he thought he was going to have his kids killed and his wife killed, they were holding hands with him running through the field where they were right close to him and not distant from him. When he thought that it was dark, it was bright outdoor light. Whatever the brain perceives in trauma, it will create a counterbalancing with freeze response. It'll create an ecstasy to counterbalance it. If you know how to ask the question and hold them accountable to get present with each frame, like a picture frame in a movie, or a frame in a movie, you can actually deconstruct these so-called traumas and find out where the ecstasies are at that moment. So I did it frame by frame by frame by frame until the so-called trauma was neutralized and his brain was able to see both the conscious and the unconscious at the same time. Simultaneous contrast, as Wilhelm Wundt, the father of experimental psychology, called it. In that moment, he had a tear of gratitude, a tear of gratitude, a tear of gratitude. Then I asked him, so what's the benefit of them ransoming you? At first, he goes, well, how can there be a benefit in that? And I said, what's the benefit of it?
Mm.
And he said, I really, 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 really got to understand and appreciate my wife and kids. I was taking them for granted. I was working long hours. I was absolutely focused on my business. And I was really, they were second. They were not priority. And I was taking it to the edge enough where it could have been a divorce, which could have destroyed my company and finance that I was striving for. But in that moment, I realized how much I appreciated my wife and kids. He said, so that's a benefit. Great. How much is that worth? And we put a dollar value on it. I said, then what's another benefit? He said, well, when I was there, they didn't feed me so great. I lost a bunch of weight and I was overweight. And my blood pressure, once I was released, came down. And since I came home, I've been doing yoga and meditation and eating differently because I'm home more and I'm with my wife and she's cooking for me. Great. So did this event actually save your life, health-wise? Yes. Did it help you save your marriage? Yes. I said, what's another benefit? He said, I have been trying for a number of years to try to get my business and all my employees and all my executives and everything else to kick into gear and take over everything. But no matter what I did, they weren't really rising to the occasion and taking command. But when I was gone, they had no choice but to do it. And by God, they took over the company. And we made more money that time I was gone than we normally made. I said, how much? He said, more than the ransom.
Yeah.
I said, so you were hiring consultants to try to get your result, but you weren't relinquishing it and you were holding on to doing everything and you weren't really clearly delegating it. And this forced you to get the delegation and to appreciate your family. And now you have more time with your family. You're now keeping yourself on exercise. You now have a team that's doing things. You're now focusing on the longer term vision of it instead of putting out fires every day. And your company's this way. And he started to get to a point where he actually had tears in his eyes of gratitude. And he says, I can't believe that in 2 hours and 10 minutes, you actually are making me feel grateful for these guys that threatened my life and tried to kill my family and ransom millions of dollars. But right now, I actually feel grateful for them. The amount that I paid is insignificant compared to what I just got out of it. I'd like to thank them. And I said, great. Anything you can't say thank you for is baggage. Anything you can say thank you for is fuel.
Mm.
So when he left there, 2 hours and 10 minutes, went back to his wife. I got a letter from his wife because he'd been under post-traumatic stress for 3 years. His wife said, I got my husband back. Thank you.
Mm.
Not only did I get him back to love me, but I got him back where he's not sleepless with anxiety, with intrusive thoughts, with fear. There's no fear now. He goes, no matter what happened, I win. When you see life on the way, not in the way, you're pretty resourceful, resilient, and adaptable, and you end up having more empowerment. So this is an example that the so-called trauma isn't trauma unless you choose to only see the downsides of it and label it such. But if you take the time to go and look for the other side, it's always there. There is no one-sided events. That's where moral hypocrisies trap people. They promote the idea of be this way, but don't be that way. But then nobody lives that way. It's a hypocrisy. So moral hypocrisies trap people into thinking things are positive or negative or good or bad, and they hold people back from the magnificence of the two sides that life offers.
Mm.
So this gentleman was liberated by that. That's just a simple example of it's not what happens to you, it's how you perceive, decide, and act upon it.
Wow, that's great. Everybody type in the chat bar what you're taking away there. John, what about people with money? First off, some people made money one time and now they struggle to make money. Someone else makes a lot of money and then all of a sudden they just want to make more and more money, but maybe they get stuck in that. Give us some of your biggest insight you learned about money, fear, struggle, and wrapped up there.
The hierarchy of your values dictates your financial destiny.
Boom.
Tell me what your values are. I'll tell you where your money's going. If you have a high value on children, your money's going to go to children. Children's education, children's schools, children's clothes, children's entertainment, children's whatever. If you have a high value on travel, it's going to go to travel. If you have a high value on spirituality, it's going to be donated to your churches or synagogues or mosques. If it's got a high value on education, you're going to go to seminars all the time. If it's back in your business, you're going to put your money back in the re-enter it in the business. If it's into investments, you're going to keep buying assets to go up. But whatever, tell me what your values are. Tell me what the hierarchy of your values are. I'll tell you how your money is going to be flowing. And money goes through society automatically from those who value it least to those who value it most. If you don't have a value on wealth building, it's not going to happen. And when you do, it's going to happen. So I realized that in my life, age 27, up until 27, I really didn't have a value on wealth building. And I lived in la la land of thinking that somehow I'll be prosperous, somehow I'll be a wealthy guy, and that's that. I didn't get grounded till 27. And then I realized that my hierarchy of values is what's counting. And if I have a higher value on buying other things than assets, well, I'm going to accumulate a bunch of stuff that's going to fill up a house. 25% of the house is basically storage of stuff that goes down in value and depreciation instead of buying assets that actually go up in value. You get trapped weighing your house down with a bunch of crap instead of actually buying assets that go up and lightens up the load. People that have a value in wealth building buy assets. People that have a value in wealth building care enough about humanity to go and find a way of serving greater numbers of people. And they have a value on money where they're not run by it. When you have a high value of money, you're more neutral about it. When you're infatuated with money, it's a sign of an amygdala. When you resent money, it's a sign of amygdala. If it represents prey or predator and you're infatuated or resentful to it, it will run you and you won't run it. But when you have a balanced view on it, you'll have self-mastery over it. As Hubert Hal Bancroft, a Pulitzer Prize winner, said in his book, The Book of Wealth, there are three things common to wealthy people. One is that they feel by divine providence and human sovereignty that they have a desire to serve vast numbers of human beings. So if you have a caring commitment to serving vast numbers of people, well, you're on your way to being wealthy. You take people like Bezos or someone like Elon Musk or them, they're managing and serving vast numbers of people. How big a service can you offer? That's the question, because that determines how much wealth you're going to have, how much income at least. The second one is that they are designed and dedicated to raising the standard of society. They don't invest in quality things just to show off stuff. They invest in quality things to reward people of excellence. And when you reward people of excellence, you raise the overall standards of society and you actually elevate people to move towards excellence. And so they do that. They surround themselves with the finest quality of things because they want to raise excellence in the world. And the third one is they've transcended the labels of good and evil to money. If you think it's good or you think it's evil, it runs you. If you understand that it's just a measurement of sustainable fair exchange and is basically compensating you for a mastery of fair exchange, a reciprocity of equanimity and pure reflective awareness, then it's a spiritual pursuit. As the Book of Wealth says, that spirit without matter is expressionless and matter without spirit is motionless. You're inspired to do something of great service, and you're measuring the material manifestations and the dedication to that. And the manifestations end up being philanthropic. Money without meaning leads to debauchery, but money with meaning leads to philanthropy. And your love of humanity is what you're dealing with, and that's the source of wealth. So if you're not building wealth, as I spoke in Iowa one time at a little church there, I said, if you're poor, it's because you don't care about humanity. You're focusing on your own problems and you're not focusing on serving people. If you focus on serving people, there's no end to how much money you can make.
John, what happens if you're living not in fair exchange between someone else? What happens then?
Well, if you try to get something for nothing with narcissism and look down on people and project your values onto them, they're going to eventually alienate you until you're humbled. Your customer's going to leave and your employees are going to get a union to squamp you down, bring you back down. And so narcissism doesn't last, it's non-sustainable. And projection of your values onto people doesn't last, it's not fair exchange. And if you minimize yourself altruistically and sacrifice the customer because you think they're more important than even you and your team, or you sacrifice for your team and have anarchy, eventually that makes it where there's no profit either, because now you've wiped out into all your cost. So nature forces you to come down from your pride or lift up from your shame and your altruism and to bring you back into sustainable fair exchange where reciprocity rules and where you now actually have where you're winning, they're winning. There's a gentleman here on the ship that at one time it was the largest gold mine in the world that he found. He owns part of Canada, and he was telling me about the key of reciprocity and sustainable fair exchange. He said that's the key mechanism to develop your wealth and develop your reputation that will stand. And I'm a firm believer in that. We both agree at 100%. That's one of the keys. So that's where the method that I've developed, the DeMartini method, can help, because it can help you realize that whatever you see in others, you have. And it can help you bring them off the pedestal and out of the pit and into your heart. And when you have them in your heart, you care about people. And you care about people, you sell people by your own enthusiasm and inspiration and certainty and presence and gratitude and love you have in your life. By whatever your innermost dominant thought is, it becomes your outermost tangible reality.
Yeah. John, you always talk about there's only three things we can control: the perception, reaction, and action or inaction. Can you talk about that a minute?
Yeah, we have sensory neurons that are peripheral neurons. We have motor neurons, which are peripheral neurons, and we have inner neurons in the brain, the central nervous system. We have control over them through glial influence, the oligodendrocytes in the peripheral nerves and the astrocytes in the central nervous system. Those two nerves respond to your attentions and intentions. Tell me what your highest value, I'll tell you what you're going to be attending and intending. And so these glial cells respond and control the nerves, and the nerves are going to respond accordingly. So you have control over only three things in your life, nothing else: your perception, your decisions, and your actions. And all of them are based on your values. Every decision you make is based on what you believe will give you the greatest advantage over disadvantage at any moment in time. And all of your perceptions automatically filter through the thalamus before it gets to the cortex information that's only applicable to what you value most. And your motor actions, your highest priority actions, are most reliable, discipline, and focus. That's where it is in your highest value. My highest value is teaching, so you can count on me to be teaching, but you can't count on me to be cooking. I haven't cooked since I was 24. You can't count on me driving a car. I haven't driven a car in 35 years. Anything that's low on my values, I delegate to other people. I delegate lovemaking to George Clooney. I found that he was more sexually appealing. And my girlfriend that's the only way she stays with me, because when I tell her if I give her George on lovemaking, she says, I said, will you still love me if I give him George? She said, I'll love you even more. And so that's how I keep my girlfriend, by keep giving her George for lovemaking. That's a bad joke, of course.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, everybody, I want you to just think about something. First, give some love in the chat bar. Also, there's a chance that we might do some private in-person time with John in August. If you're interested in joining me and a small group of people to spend time with John in August, just type in me in the chat bar. It will be in New Jersey, but closer to New York. Megan will make a list. We're going to keep it small, exclusive. And my job is we're going to hit every question that we can, from relations to finance to wealth to relationship, that we can for the time John's with us. John, last question before you go. What's the thing, if there was something you think this is majority all business owners, that business owners or humans should really think about today, 2025, moving into this AI robot future, what would you tell people to focus or pay attention on?
Every symptom in the business is the feedback mechanism guiding you to authenticity. Every symptom in your business, every symptom. I've been blessed to be doing consulting in business for 43 years. Every symptom in your business is a feedback to guide you back to authenticity.
Yeah.
So if you get cocky and proud and righteous, you're going to get symptoms to humble you. Can I share a story about Jeff Bezos on that one?
Oh, please. Love it.
So Jeff Bezos, there's a video online you've probably seen talking about Sony. Jeff Bezos referring to Sony. Anybody seen that one? Probably. If you haven't seen it, go look for it. Just type in Jeff Bezos, Sony, Amazon or whatever, and look up YouTube. Now, what he's saying is that the guy that was heading up Sony at the time was not interested in building Sony directly. He was interested in changing the entire outlook of Japan at the time and stop them being copycats, but to be leaders in industry. And so he completely revamped Sony in such a way that it created a new image for the people of Japan. His cause was bigger than himself. Cause was bigger than Sony. His cause was nationwide. So Bezos saw that and listened to his lecture about that and decided he was going to be customer centric with Amazon. And probably the most customer centric business it was at the time. And he basically focused on how do we maximize the impact on the customer. And he knocked it out of the ballpark and created Amazon. Now, when he did, he was customer centric, but he wasn't employee centric. So eventually, just a few years ago, the employees riled up against him and they got the Teamsters Union to come in and say, hey, you need to be employee centric too. So he was focused on customers, but he wasn't focused on employees. And they started complaining that they're working too hard and not making enough. And and Stacey Adams, the psychologist for business, said that there's equity theory. And anytime you're out of equity with people, they'll create symptoms. So he realized when the Teamsters Union came in, they had to renegotiate a better deal for the employees. And now he's in fair exchange with the employees. He was in fair exchange with the customer flourished. Now he's in fair exchange with employees. Now the employees flourish. The moment they do, their productivity went up, and he made more money than the extra costs he had to put out. And he got a lesson. And then he realized when that occurred, now the stakeholders and the shareholders are now wanting a bigger cut. So he took some of the profits out from himself, put it back into the shareholders. They started now being more engaged, and more people came in with more money to engage. Yep. When he did, he actually made more money. So now he was now customer-centric, employee-centric, stakeholders and shareholder-centric, and his business went up. So every symptom that's going on is trying to get sustainable, fair exchange and equity, according to Stacey Adams, equity in every level of the business, to every person that's involved, including the spouse. If you don't do it and you're not fair exchange with the spouse then divorces you and his wife takes half of it. That was the one area he did not put customer centric, his spouse. And so she got half the business temporarily. That was his lesson. Now, that's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just what happened, but happens in about half the population. But the point is, anywhere where you don't have sustainability, you'll create symptoms to create you back to sustainable fair exchange.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. Everybody give him a love in the chat bar. Hey, Dr. Demartini, thank you so much for being a friend, a mentor to me and my whole family. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on today. And I'm pretty sure we'll be seeing you in August with a group of people.
Yes. Well, I look forward to that. Thank you for putting up with my few jokes. They're pretty bad. And if you go on GP or Chat GPT, you'll find out if you look on Demartini, it says the king of bad jokes. So that's, at least I feel royal somehow. That's my only royalty I've gotten. But thank you for being with me today. Thank you, Mike, for giving me this opportunity to share with you. I look forward to seeing you again in August. And have an absolutely amazing day. And just know that the magnificence of who you are is far greater than any fancies you'll impose on yourself by comparison to others. Don't compare yourself to other people. Compare your daily actions to your own highest values.
There you go.